America is dying. Not from external threats, though those exist, not from economic collapse or natural disaster. America is dying because we're abandoning the principles that made us free. And one of the most fundamental principles under assault right now is the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. The left wants to disarm you. They say it's about safety, about preventing crime, about protecting children, but that's a lie. It's about control. A disarmed population is a controlled population. An armed citizenry is the ultimate check on government tyranny. Today, we're going to examine what the Second Amendment actually says and means, why the founders included it, how the left is systematically destroying gun laws, why an armed citizenry is essential to freedom, the moral responsibility of gun ownership, and what we must do to protect this fundamental right before it's too late. It's going to be a challenge. And this is going to challenge people, the Christians who think that Jesus was a pacifist, conservatives who believe we can compromise on gun control, anyone who thinks the government will protect them. The truth is that gun rights are constitutional and essential to liberty. They're the foundation of every other freedom that we have. Without the ability to defend ourselves, all other rights exist at the government's pleasure. Let's get into it.
Courage, compassion, faith, freedom, truth. Welcome to Courage in the Darkness with your host, Philip Roberts. It's time to Awaken America.
Let me start with what the Second Amendment actually says, because it's been deliberately misinterpreted for decades. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. 27 words. Clear and unambiguous, yet we have endless debates about what it means. The Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to own firearms, not a collective right tied to militia service, not a privilege granted by the government, an individual right. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not the right of the militia, not the right of the military. The right of the people shall not be infringed. Means exactly what it says. The government can't restrict this right. It can't regulate it. It can't require permits or licenses or registrations. It can't ban any type of firearm. The founders were crystal clear. They just fought a war against a tyrannical government that tried to disarm them. They wanted to ensure future Americans could resist tyranny the same way that they did. Gun control advocates love to focus on well-regulated militia. They claim this limits the right to organized military units. That's wrong. Completely wrong. First, well-regulated in the 18th century language meant well-functioning or properly equipped. It didn't mean government regulation. Second, the militia in the founders' understanding was all able-bodied citizens, not a standing army or National Guard. The militia was the people, armed and ready to defend freedom. Third, the sentence structure is clear. The first clause explains the purpose. The second clause establishes the right. The right belongs to the people, and the purpose is maintaining a free state through citizen militias. The founders wanted armed citizens who could form militias to resist tyranny. That's what the amendment protects. The founders had just defeated the world's most powerful military using citizen soldiers. Farmers with muskets, merchants with rifles, regular people who owned weapons. The British tried to disarm the colonists. That's what sparked the revolution. British troops marching to Concord to seize colonial weapons. The founders understood that tyranny always starts with disarmament, so they wrote the Second Amendment to prevent government from ever disarming the people. This wasn't about hunting, wasn't about sports shooting. It was about the power to resist oppression, the ultimate check on government authority. Those 4 words are most important. Shall not be infringed. Infringed means violated, encroached upon, limited. The founders could have written shall not be prohibited or shall not be banned. They chose stronger language. Any restriction on the right to keep and bear arms is an infringement. Background checks, waiting periods, magazine capacity limits, assault weapon bans, concealed carry permits, all of it infringes on the right. I know that's controversial. Many conservatives support some gun regulations, but the text is clear. Shall not be infringed. The founders meant what they said, and we've ignored it to our detriment. The founders considered this right so fundamental that they made it the Second Amendment right after the freedom of speech and religion. There's a reason for that. The primary purpose of the Second Amendment is enabling citizens to resist tyrannical government. The founders understood human nature. They knew that governments trend towards tyranny, that power corrupts, that rulers seek to expand their authority at the expense of liberty. An armed citizenry is the ultimate safeguard. When the people have weapons, government must fear them. Government can't become fully tyrannical when citizens can shoot back. This is why every tyrannical regime in history has disarmed its population. Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, Communist China, Cuba, Venezuela, Cambodia, Rwanda, Ottoman Turkey, every single one. Tyrants feared armed citizens because armed citizens can overthrow tyrants. The founders wanted to ensure Americans could always resist tyranny. That's why the Second Amendment exists. The second purpose is the personal protection part. The right to defend yourself, your family, your property. The founders understood that individuals have the right and responsibility to protect themselves. That police can't be everywhere. That criminals exist. That evil people will prey on the defenseless. An armed citizen can defend against criminals. A disarmed citizen is a victim waiting to happen. Studies consistently show that armed citizens stop crimes, that concealed carry reduces violent crime, that guns in the home deter burglars. More importantly, self-defense is a natural right. You have the right to protect your life. That right is meaningless without the tools to exercise it. An armed population deters both crime and tyranny. Criminals avoid areas where citizens are likely armed. That's why mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. Killers target defenseless victims. Governments fear armed populations. That's why would-be tyrants always push gun control. They can't oppress people who can fight back. The mere existence of an armed citizenry provides deterrence, even if weapons are never used. Firearms are the great equalizer. A 100-pound woman with a gun can defend against a 250-pound male attacker. An elderly person can protect themselves against young criminals. A disabled person can resist able-bodied threats. Without firearms, physical strength determines who wins violent encounters. The strong prey on the weak. With firearms, anyone can defend themselves. That's equality. That's justice. The founders understood this. They wanted all citizens, regardless of size, strength, or physical ability, to have the means of self-protection. The founders knew that freedom and firearms are inseparable. Unarmed citizens are subjects, not free people. They depend on government for protection. They can't resist the government oppression. They're at the mercy of criminals and tyrants. Armed citizens are truly free. They can protect themselves. They can resist tyranny. They're sovereign individuals, not dependent ward of the state. Rights come from God, not the government. When government claims the authority to disarm you, it's claiming authority over your God-given right to self-preservation. That's tyranny. The founders wanted to prevent it. That's why the Second Amendment uses such absolute language, shall not be infringed. Let's talk about what's actually happening in America. How the left is systematically dismantling the Second Amendment through incremental infringement. The left learned they can't ban guns outright. Americans won't accept it. The Second Amendment is too clear. So they use different strategies. Incremental restrictions. Each one seems reasonable in isolation. Together, they destroy the right. Ban assault weapons. Limit magazine capacity. Require background checks for private sales. Create gun registries. Red flag laws. Waiting periods. License requirements. Storage mandates. None completely eliminates guns. Each just makes it a little harder to exercise your rights. But add them all up, and gun ownership becomes effectively impossible for many Americans. That's the goal. Make guns so regulated, restricted, and legally dangerous to own that people give up their rights. Let me break down specific tactics the left uses. Number one, let's talk about the definitional games. They redefine terms to criminalize common firearms. Assault weapon. That's a made-up term. It doesn't mean anything specific. They apply it to scary-looking rifles that function identically to hunting rifles. Let me break this down to you really quick, going completely off script, but not off topic. My water bottle. If I hit you with it, now it's an assault water bottle. Oh no, we should ban it. I mean, seriously, what the hell is wrong with these people? Back on track. It doesn't mean anything specific. They apply it to scary-looking rifles that function identically to hunting rifles. The AR-15, they're not military weapons. They're semi-automatic civilian rifles. But again, I've got to stop right there and say semi-automatic means You got to pull the trigger for each round that the gun expresses. You don't hold it down. People can't get those unless they have certain licenses granted by their states. Millions of Americans own them. I have lots. They're used for sport hunting and home defense. But they call them assault weapons, and suddenly they sound dangerous. They ban them. Same with high-capacity magazines. They define a 30-round magazine as high capacity to justify bans. But 30 rounds is a standard mag. That's what the weapon is designed for. It's linguistic manipulation to justify restrictions. Number 2, incremental restrictions. They never stop at one restriction. Each common sense measure is followed by demands for more. Universal background checks, then waiting periods, then permits, then training requirements, then insurance mandates, then storage laws. How about the liability for crimes committed with your gun? Each step makes gun ownership more expensive, complicated, and legally risky. That's the point. Using tragedy. Here we go. Here's something that I talk about a lot. Every mass shooting becomes justification for new restrictions. They exploit dead children to push your gun control facts before they're even known. Doesn't matter that the proposed restrictions wouldn't have prevented the tragedy in the first place. Doesn't matter that existing laws were broken. Emotional manipulation trumps logic. If it saves one life, becomes justification for any restriction. But they never apply that standard consistently. Cars kill far more people, but nobody bans cars. Administrative tyranny. When they can't pass gun control through Congress, they use executive orders and agency regulations. ATF redefines what counts as a firearm, reclassifies accessories, changes rules or manufacturing and transfers, all without congressional approval. This is taxation without representation. Unelected bureaucrats making law. About financial pressure. They pressure banks, credit card companies, and insurance providers to refuse service to gun manufacturers, dealers, and owners. Operation Choke Point. Targeted gun businesses. Some banks won't provide services to firearms industry. Some credit cards won't process gun purchases. If they can't ban guns legally, they'll make the industry economically unviable. Lawfare. They sue gun manufacturers for crimes committed with guns. It's like suing Ford because a drunk driver killed somebody. The goal isn't winning lawsuits, it's bankrupting the industry through legal fees, death by litigation. Social stigma. They stigmatize gun ownership, call gun owners violent, associate firearms with terrorism and extremism, treat legal gun owners like criminals. This creates social pressure. People hide their gun ownership. Parents don't teach their children. The culture of responsible gun ownership erodes. Let me detail specific current threats. Red flag laws. These allow police to confiscate guns based on accusation without due process. Someone claims you're dangerous, judge issues orders, gun seized. No crime committed, no trial, just accusation and confiscation. This violates the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable seizure. Fifth Amendment, due process, and the Second Amendment, but it's spreading. Multiple states have banned AR-15s and similar rifles. Biden wants a federal ban. These rifles account for a tiny fraction of gun deaths, but they're popular and effective for self-defense. That's why they're targeted. Magazine capacity limits. Some states limit magazines to 10 rounds, some to 15. Arbitrary numbers with no basis in reducing crime. But they make standard firearms illegal and force gun owners to modify or surrender property. Universal background check sounds reasonable until you understand implementation requires National Gun Registry. Government tracking every gun and gun owner. That's preparation for confiscation. They need to know who has guns before they can seize them. Waiting periods. These delay gun purchases ostensibly to prevent impulsive violence, but they prevent immediate self-defense. Woman with stalker can't get gun quickly. Person facing immediate threat must wait. Waiting periods kill vulnerable people. Storage requirements. Laws requiring guns to be locked up separately from ammunition make them useless as home defense. If you can't access your gun quickly during a home invasion, it's worthless for protection. Liability for gun crimes. Proposals to hold gun owners liable if their stolen gun is used in a crime. This creates massive legal liability for gun ownership. Many people can't afford the risk. The end game? Make no mistake, the goal is complete citizen disarmament. They won't say it openly, but it's politically unpopular. But every restriction moves towards that goal. Look at other countries. UK, Australia, Canada, all started with reasonable restrictions. All ended with near total bans and confiscation. That's the model. That's the goal. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Gun rights aren't just about personal protection, they're essential to political freedom. The ultimate check on tyranny. Every other right depends on the Second Amendment. Freedom of speech means nothing if the government can silence you by force and you can't resist. Religious freedom means nothing if the government can close your church and you have no recourse. All rights ultimately depend on the ability to defend them. An armed population is the ultimate check on government tyranny. Politicians who fear their constituents govern carefully. Politicians who don't fear their constituents become tyrants. We saw this with the COVID lockdowns. The government locked down businesses, closed churches, arrested people for being outside, mandated experimental medical treatments, censored doctors who disagreed. And most people complied out of fear. What stopped it from becoming permanent tyranny? The implicit threat that government or that Americans are armed. That's what stopped it. The government knew it couldn't push too far without risking armed resistance. An armed citizenry is the final safeguard against overreach becoming permanent oppression. Every tyrannical regime disarmed its population before committing atrocities. Nazi Germany, gun registration in Weimar Republic. Hitler used those records to confiscate guns from Jews and political opponents. Then came the Holocaust. The Soviet Union, Lenin and Stalin disarmed the population. And then came the gulags and forced starvation, killing millions of people. Communist China, Mao disarmed citizens. And then came Cultural Revolution, killing tens of millions. Cambodia, Khmer Rouge, disarmed population. Then killed a quarter of the country. Ottoman Turkey, disarmed Armenians. And then committed genocide, killing 1.5 million people. Rwanda, disarmed. Then Hutu extremists murdered 800,000 people in 3 months. The pattern is consistent throughout history. Disarmament, then democide. Government committed genocide against disarmed populations. An armed citizenry prevents it. Not because armed citizens always win. Government has superior firepower. But because armed resistance is costly, tyrants prefer easy victims. People say, you can't fight the military with rifles. That's wrong. Afghanistan, Vietnam, Iraq all prove that armed populations can resist superior military force. Guerrilla warfare, insurgency, making occupation costly. American citizens own 400 plus million firearms. That's more than all militaries on Earth combined. Even a small percentage resisting creates insurgency no military could defeat. More importantly, American military is made of citizens who won't eagerly fire on their neighbors. Many would defect rather than enforce tyranny. But none of this matters if citizens are already disarmed. You can't resist if you don't have any weapons. The existence of armed citizenry deters tyranny even without violence. Politicians know Americans are armed. That constrains how far they'll push. They tested limits during COVID with lockdowns and mandates, but they knew they couldn't push too far or risk armed resistance. If Americans were disarmed, there'd be no constraint. Government could do whatever it wanted. The mere possibility of armed resistance keeps government more accountable than any other mechanism. Throughout history, vulnerable minorities suffer most from disarmament. The Jews in Nazi Germany, the Armenians in Ottoman Turkey, Rwanda disarmed. They all disarmed populations subjected to genocide. But when minorities are armed, persecution becomes costly. Korean shop owners during the LA riots defended their businesses with rifles while police withdrew. armed citizens protecting themselves when the government won't. Gun rights protect the vulnerable from both criminals and government oppression. Freedom requires responsibility. The founders understood that freedom only works for virtuous people. You can't have armed citizens without responsible citizens. But the solution isn't disarmament. It's rebuilding virtue, teaching responsibility, raising moral people. Disarming people treats them like children who can't be trusted. That's tyranny's mindset. Free people are armed and responsible. The Second Amendment assumes virtuous citizens using freedom responsibly. When we abandon virtue, we get calls for disarmament. The solution is restoring virtue, not surrendering freedom. Gun ownership comes with serious moral responsibilities. If you're going to exercise this right, you gotta do it properly. Training and proficiency. If you own a gun for self-defense, you have a moral obligation to know how to use it safely and effectively. Taking a concealed carry class isn't enough. You need to have regular practice. You need to be proficient under stress. You need to understand laws governing defense use of force. Incompetent gun owners are dangerous to themselves and others. If you're going to bear arms, do it responsibly. Proper storage and safety and security. You gotta keep guns secure from unauthorized access, especially kids. This doesn't mean useless for self-defense. It means responsible storage that balances accessibility with security. Gun safes, biometric lockboxes, proper education for children in the home. These are moral obligations. And common sense, people. Understanding deadly force laws. You gotta understand when deadly force is legal and morally justified. Self-defense laws vary by state. You need to know your state's requirements. Castle doctrine, duty to retreat, reasonable fear of death or serious injury. Using deadly force incorrectly could destroy your life legally, even if morally justified. Avoiding unnecessary confrontation. Carrying a gun doesn't make you a vigilante or a hero. Your goal is avoiding violence, not seeking it. Don't escalate arguments. Don't put yourself in stupid situations. Don't go looking for trouble. Concealed carry means being the most polite, calm person in any confrontation. De-escalate. Walk away. Only use force as a last resort when your life is threatened. The psychological preparation that you need. You gotta be mentally prepared to take a life when necessary, if necessary. Most people aren't. The psychological weight of killing someone, even justified self-defense, is enormous. You need to think through scenarios beforehand. Understand the decision you might face. Be prepared mentally and spiritually. If you can't accept that responsibility, reconsider carrying a gun. Teaching the next generation. If you got kids, you have the responsibility to teach them about guns properly. Not hiding guns and pretending they don't exist. That creates dangerous curiosity. Teach them safety. Let them handle the guns under supervision. Remove the mystery. Teach responsible use. Teach respect for deadly weapons. Teach respect for deadly force. Teach when and how self-defense is appropriate. Raise the next generation of responsible armed citizens. So, what do? How do we protect the Second Amendment from the ongoing assault from the Democrats? Political action. Vote for politicians who actually support gun rights, not the ones who claim to but compromise. Primary out Republicans who support red flag bans, or red flag laws, assault weapon bans, or any gun control. Support candidates with perfect Second Amendment records. Contact representatives. Make your own voice heard. Let them know gun control will cost them your vote. Support Second Amendment legal organizations. Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, the Firearms Policy Coalition. These groups file lawsuits challenging unconstitutional gun laws. They've won major victories, including Heller, McDonald, and Bruin decisions. Donate. Support their work. Legal battles protect all of our rights. If the government passes unconstitutional gun laws, don't comply with them. Registration schemes, don't register. Assault weapon bans, don't surrender. Magazine capacity limits, ignore them. Millions of Americans simply refuse to comply with gun control laws. That makes enforcement impossible. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm advocating for non-compliance with unconstitutional laws. There's a difference. If you're on a jury for a gun crime where someone is charged only with legal possession, not using a gun to commit an actual crime, consider nullification. Juries can refuse to convict even if law was technically broken. If the law is unjust, free the defendant. This requires courage, but it's how free citizens check government tyranny. We need to rebuild gun culture. Teach children to shoot. Take friends to the range. Normalize gun ownership. Make guns normal again. Not scary, not controversial. Normal tools that normal, responsible citizens own. Support youth shooting. Hunter safety courses, competitive shooting. Build the next generation of gun owners. Understand that gun confiscation may be attempted. Have plans. Don't put all your guns on government registries. Don't advertise what you own. Maintain operational security. If they don't know what you have, they can't confiscate it. And if confiscation is ordered, decide now. Will you comply or resist? Because that moment will require split-second decision. Think it through beforehand. The best way to prevent gun confiscation is making it too costly. If Americans demonstrate willingness to defend their rights, government won't push confiscation. The cost would be too high. But if we signal we'll comply, they'll push further. Demonstrate that the Second Amendment is the line we won't cross. That we'll defend gun rights with force if necessary. That's not advocating violence, that's deterrence. Like nuclear weapons prevent war by making war too costly. An armed, resolute citizenry prevents tyranny without firing a shot. Gun rights are not about hunting or sport. They're about freedom. They're about the ability to protect yourself and your family, about the ultimate check on government tyranny. The Second Amendment is clear. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Period. No exceptions, no compromises, no reasonable restrictions. The founders included this right because they understood that armed citizens are free citizens. Disarmed citizens are subjects. Every tyrannical government in history has disarmed its population before committing atrocities. The left is systematically destroying gun rights through incremental infringement. Each restriction seems small. Together, they eliminate the right. That's the strategy. Death by 1,000 cuts until Americans are disarmed and helpless. We cannot let this happen. Gun rights are the foundation of all other rights. Without the ability to defend freedom, all other freedoms are conditional on government permission. So we must fight politically, legally, culturally. We must refuse to comply with unconstitutional gun laws. We must teach the next generation. We have to demonstrate that the Second Amendment is the line we will not allow the government to cross. This is not extreme. This is defending the constitutional republic the founders created. This is honoring the bloodshed by patriots who died for our freedom. This is fulfilling our responsibility as free citizens. Luke 22:36 says, "Let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one." Those are the words of Jesus Christ. Not a suggestion, a command. Arm yourself. Prioritize self-defense so highly that you should sell your own clothes to buy weapons if necessary. The sword in Jesus' day is the firearm in ours. The principle remains the same. God's people should be prepared to defend life, their own lives, their families, innocent lives. This isn't about seeking violence. It's about being prepared to stop it. It's about recognizing that we live in a fallen world where evil exists and where tyrants rise if good men are disarmed. If you don't own a gun, get one. Get training. Take the responsibility seriously. And if the government tries to take it, refuse. If you already own guns, teach others. Bring new people into gun culture. Normalize responsible gun ownership. Support Second Amendment organizations. Vote for uncompromising pro-gun politicians. Speak up, don't hide your gun ownership, and prepare mentally and spiritually for what may come. Because the assault on gun rights is accelerating. They won't stop until Americans are disarmed or until we draw a line saying they cannot cross. I pray it never comes to violence. But free people must be willing to defend freedom, or it's gonna be taken. The choice is ours. Armed citizens or disarmed subjects. Freedom or tyranny. There is no middle ground. Choose freedom. Bear arms. Defend your rights. And teach your children to do the same. If you found this episode helpful, please share it, like it, and subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. And if you want to support this work, consider becoming a member on Patreon at Courage in the Darkness, where you can get free merchandise, and access to all of my content. Thank you for listening. Stay armed, stay free, defend liberty. God bless.